What is more wonderful than a city that is carefully designed for human interaction and aspiration? A place where people can come together to work, learn, love, consume, and create. If you can do that in a place that is affordable, safe, beautiful, and comfortable, then you are by definition living in a good city, which is a lucky thing, because with the exception of climate change and a healthy democratic culture, nothing will determine the quality of life in the 21st century more than the quality of the cities that we live in. If we can make them sustainable, welcoming, productive, beautiful, and fun, then millions of people will thrive. But when cities fail to meet our basic human needs for safety, joy, and connection, they are among our greatest engines of immiseration. Let me explain what I mean by talking about Austin and Oslo. It might seem like an odd pairing, but they're about the same size. They are both attractive capital cities in larger oil economies. Both are constantly under construction, and both have an undeniable hip factor. When I was in other parts of Scandinavia, I couldn't tell what was more exciting to people, the fact that I was from Austin or the fact that I was going to Oslo. But that's where the similarities end, because it feels very different to move around Oslo. Despite all the common ground, in some ways, Oslo is the anti-Austin. And not just because it's surrounded by fjords and mountains, while Austin has highways and suburbs. We have more than that, of course. In fact, there's a lot to love about my hometown, where I've lived on and off since 1985. But from running an urban studies project called The End of Austin, and from teaching a class called Why Cities Matter, I've learned that there's a growing disconnect between Austin's rhetoric and reality. As our city has become a global brand in the 21st century, we've started to see cracks in the urban machinery. The relaxed little city of slackers that I first encountered in the 1980s is gone. And that's okay, I guess. Cities change. But what's not okay is how the new Austin is straining under the weight of rapid population growth, mega gentrification, transportation woes, and an unaffordability crisis in which the median home is climbing towards $700,000. Despite all this transformation, we still hear the old narratives of the city. You still see "Keep Austin Weird" on t-shirts, but it feels hollow in a town that's pricing out musicians and students while catering to billionaires like Elon Musk. And live music capital of the world? Well, come on now. We're not even the live music capital of Texas. We've got Willie and Spoon, but Houston has everybody else. Megan Thee Stallion, Travis Scott, ZZ Top, Lyle Lovett, Beyonce. So be forewarned. Austin likes to blow some smoke about its true identity. But wait a second. If everyone's moving to Austin, it has to be great. Well, just because people are moving here for work or school doesn't mean that the city is serving them well. Las Vegas, Phoenix, and other sunbelt cities have had tremendous growth, and they're neither sustainable nor beautiful. The reality is that Austin is filled with smart, creative people who are under increasing stress because of the way their city is designed. If you're a student of urban studies or a resident of Austin, you know what I'm talking about. But if you're just learning about Austin, then this is where the contrast with Oslo comes in handy. For me, the Norwegian capital is intoxicating as an object of urban studies because everything functions so well. It doesn't have crazy highways and jammed parking lots in every direction. And that's because it has density, which allows for walkability and human interaction. Where Austin is sprawling endlessly for miles that require a car for every little errand, Oslo is compact. In 15 minutes, you can go from the lush green countryside of Norway to the city center of Oslo. That's not possible in any sprawling Texas city where cars are king. More than compact, Oslo is knit together. Its public transit feels like a magic carpet ride. I mean, in Austin, we don't have a subway at all. We have a light rail that goes from nowhere to nowhere, at least for another decade. Our buses are often stuck in traffic because they don't have dedicated lanes. And riding a bike, like Lance Armstrong, well, the reality is Austin is a car culture with cyclists praying not to get hit, while in Oslo, traffic is moving slower, on a more human scale and pace. Some of that goes back to the medieval origins of Oslo, compared to the sunbelt boom of Austin. They are cities from different centuries, and it shows. But some of the differences have modern roots. They are the product of recent choices. And Austin has made some belated investments in bike infrastructure, thankfully. But the city is sprawling so fast that it's impossible to keep up. And that's why cycling in Austin is still a mess. Of course, you can find a lot of stories about Austin being a great city for cyclists, but not for a regular person commuting on streets that are often dirty, hot, and dangerous. Last week, I went out on my bike to take some photos for this project, and a distracted driver almost sent me to the hospital. The bottom line is you can ride your bike to work here, but between the 100-degree heat, the torn-up roads, the lack of bike lanes, and the unfriendly drivers, I don't recommend it. And that's a design flaw. Or consider the difference between our main libraries when it comes to mobility, walkability, and transit. Both are architecturally stunning, high-tech wonders. But while limited parking at the Austin Library could set you back as much as $40, also put their library where people can stroll in by tram, subway, or bus. Parking is nowhere to be seen because there is no need. The result is that the Oslo Library has a kind of civic vitality, a non-stop stream of happy people coming up its escalators that would be the envy of Austin on most days. And this is emblematic of the differences between the two cities. There are so many hidden costs to being inside a sprawling car culture. Consider our green spaces. Density means that the parks in Oslo are usually a few blocks away, while in Austin, you need to drive to the green space and look for parking. Even our beautiful crown jewel in Austin, the amazing Barton Springs, is getting suffocated by parking woes. And is it easily accessible by public transportation? Can you walk to it? No. Of course, it's better for the environment to have urban density and good public transportation, but there's also a huge emotional benefit to a city with ease of movement. You can see how relaxed people are when you're zipping around Oslo. There's something in the relaxed mobility and the human scale of the city that is comforting. You don't see dozens of intersections that look like they're out of a Mad Max movie. You don't feel potholes that are going to knock your fillings out. You won't see an interstate cutting through the center of downtown. So it's a city that takes care of its own, and that may relate to the fact that you won't see almost 3,000 people sleeping on the streets as you do in Austin. Now, Austin is still amazing in certain pockets, if you can get to them, because the economy is drawing almost 70,000 transplants each year. Well, the infrastructure can't keep up with all that human pressure, not unless we make hard choices about how we move around the city. If we keep doubling down on a sprawl of highways, lawns, and single-family homes, Austin's just going to become an unaffordable version of Dallas or Houston, not the charming, unique city it has always been. So maybe we need a revolution in our mindset about Austin. What scholars call retrofitting suburbia for density is hard, but possible. And we need to find those ways to become more compact and better connected. And to get there, we might ask ourselves, WWOD, what would Oslo do? Because I think we have a lot to learn from this Scandinavian city. It's safer, cleaner, easier to navigate, more relaxing, closer to nature, more sustainable, and prettier. It's no surprise that it's the #1 city in the world for work-life balance. And that could have been us. 50 years ago, Austin was safer, cleaner, easier to navigate, and closer to nature. And we are capable of making investments in the common good. In 2020, we finally voted to expand our light rail network, though it won't come online for another decade at least. And we have done some amazing retrofitting projects, like turning the old Highland Mall into a community college wonderland. That's a big step in the right direction, which is away from some of the worst traffic in America. The old Texas solution of widening the freeway never solves the problem. So we have to face our transportation crisis in new ways and ask ourselves, maybe there's something we can learn from that wonderful city on the fjords. Austin is a special place, and it is a potentially great city for the 21st century. It deserves better than more traffic and sprawl. It deserves to be the kind of place where you can age in place on a diminished income and without a car. It deserves to be the kind of place where it's pleasant to move around the city, not an exhausting death battle with frantic drivers. I'm not naive. We are never going to be Norway. We are Texas, and the car is sacred to a lot of people. But we can look for countervailing influences that push against cars dominating every square foot of the city. I don't expect everyone to agree with me, but if your response is simply Austin, love it or leave it, well, get ready to live in Lone Star, Los Angeles. We'll be a city a lot like LA, where there is already over 200 square miles of parking. And we'll have highways like Katy, Texas, 22 lanes across. And when that happens, get ready to say goodbye to the traditional charms of life in Austin. But remember, cities are based on choices, and it doesn't have to be that way.